Thank you. I will call this meeting to order. All of the planning commissioners are in attendance, so welcome to the Salt Lake City Planning Division Planning Commission's meeting for November 10th, 2021. We will start this meeting with my declaration that I, Amy Berry, Chair of the Planning Commission, hereby determine that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic conditions existing in Salt Lake City, including but not limited to the elevated number of cases, that meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. Okay, moving on. Our first agenda item is the consent agenda. And just for housekeeping for you all, this is going to include the minutes as well as the 3 time extensions. These time extensions do not have a public hearing component to them, so they're a straight vote. If any of you have specific questions on any of those 4 items, you can let me know and we can address those now. Otherwise, I would be looking for a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay. Well, that was a little quick. 1 second. Okay, I have a motion by Sarah and a second by Brenda. We'll take a roll call. Maureen.
Yes.
Adrian.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Andreas.
I'll vote yes.
Okay. Amy. Brenda.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
And Sarah.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. And we will now move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. Our first, oh no, wait, sorry. We have a report of the chair, which I have none. Maureen, Vice Chair?
Vice Chair has nothing. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, and Nick, report of the Director.
I do have a couple of things. First is that last night the City Council adopted the proposed code changes that would eliminate the special exception process. So that is finally done at this point. That goes into effect once it's published, which usually happens about a week to 10 days after the decision by the City Council. I looked this morning and we had somewhere between I can't remember the exact number, somewhere around 45 open applications. Some of those are actually completed, but for whatever reason in the program we use to track those, it didn't mark them as closed, even though they're closed. So we probably will expect to see some decisions on some of those. Hopefully very few, if any of those, will come to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission usually only sees, maybe a dozen or so of those per year. And so just to give you an update on that. The other thing that I'm not sure if this was brought up at the last meeting, but we have a number of new planners that have either started or will be starting in the next week. Some of them you've met already, and some you'll see some new faces, including a new administrator to help Aubrey with boards and commissions. So hopefully in a few weeks we'll have that person on board, and they'll be able to. You'll meet them, and they'll be helping, obviously, and you'll work closely with or communicate closely with that individual. So that's the big news. We're also have 2 remaining openings. A lot of changes this year in the planning division that we're working through. So we should be hopefully fully staffed by sometime in mid-December. So that's a good thing. Our division grew we were 30 people at the end of last budget year to 41 this budget year. So not all of those individuals are planners that will come to the Planning Commission, but it's been a big change. And I'm not sure that this has been announced to the Planning Commission or not. And some of you probably haven't, you're new enough that you probably haven't met this person, but and I guess there's probably some people in the public who don't know this yet too, but our zoning administrator, Joel Patterson, is, after 30 plus years working for the city, retiring on December 31st. And we also have a retirement in our development review planners occurring on December 31st. So the change continues. Those shoes are going to be they're very large and impossible to fill, but felt the Planning Commission should know that. Many of you have interacted with Joel over the years, either in your professional capacity or for those longer tenured planning commissioners. So we are planning on some sort of celebration for Joel, but it's kind of hard in this point of time. But anyway, wanted to let everybody know that. And second,
So Nick, are you gonna take his brain and preserve it forevermore?
yeah,
And
we're working on that right now.
Okay.
At least some cloning, maybe. We don't know.
That would be smart.
And maybe we can clone someone to go do the retirement side and we can keep him. But yeah, we're very, very happy for Joel. If anyone's earned it, to have a amazing retirement, it's him. So anyway, and then I don't know, some of you probably know this, and I don't mean to necessarily put you on the spot, Sarah, but I think you have some news to probably share as well.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 5 years. Thank you, Nick. Things have just gotten busy enough with some work things that I am having to step off. I'm just missing too many meetings and I feel like it's not fair. So I've asked Nick, I've told Nick I'm resigning and he's gonna work to replace me. So thank you, everybody. It's been an honor, and just FYI, I'm sticking around for a few more weeks till I think we said end of year would be my last meeting. So I am gonna be, I'll still keep popping in as long as y'all need me.
And that is all I had. Thank you.
Well, I dislike that part, but okay. Move on. Okay, so public hearing, we'll move on to the public hearing part. If I can get over my disappointment, Sarah. The first item up for our public hearing is the TAG Townhomes Plan Development at approximately 765 North, 400 West. Case number PLN PCM 2021-00545, and the planner is Chrissy.
Thank you. Nick or Amy, can I get the sharing function, please?
Sorry, my screen went black for a minute. Give me 1 second. All
There we
right.
go. Okay, should have worked. Okay, so good evening. So this is a request from TAG SLC for plan development approval to build 28 new townhomes on the properties located at approximately 765 North, 400 West, located in the MU mixed use zone. Through the plan development process, the applicant is requesting approval of new lots without street frontage. Staff is recommending approval with conditions listed in the staff report. To give you a quick overview, the proposed project is a 3-story townhome development and will consist of 4 new buildings, each with 7 townhome units. Each unit will have its own garage for parking accessed by 2 drive aisles. And you can see that on the site plan in front of you. So 400 West is actually at the top and North is on the left side. but there are 2 drive aisles and then pedestrian access in the middle and on the sides. So as mentioned, through the plan development process, the applicant is requesting 1 modification of the zoning ordinance. The ordinance requires all new lots must have frontage on a public street. The project could be developed by right as a condominium project or apartment building, but the modification is needed to provide for new single-family lots without street frontage. Because this site is located in the MU zoning district, there are fewer design standards and overall zoning standards than found in other districts. So as such, the original submittal met the base zoning requirements, but it did include a fairly blank street-facing facade. So staff worked with the applicant to provide a more interactive and visually appealing street-facing facade. They included additional landscaping to create front yard areas, material changes to provide a contrast and scale, a reduction in the amount of stucco, and the addition of a new material around the doorways to highlight the entrance. So overall, a plan development generally has to do with modifications that result in a better product. Staff is of the opinion that the modifications for lots without street frontage through the plan development process results in a better designed street-facing facade than could be built by right under the MU zoning district. So as far as public involvement, staff did not hear from the local community council, but I did receive two comments from one person who was concerned about just the general location and proximity to industrial development. Those are included in your staff report. But staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the plan development as proposed with the conditions listed. And as a note, the first condition, final building permit plans shall include 20% open space. Since the publication of the staff report, the applicant did submit a revised landscape plan that does meet that requirement. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also available.
Hey, planning commissioners, any questions for staff at this point? Okay, hearing none. I believe we have applicant Jordan. Sorry. It's okay, Amy, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Amy, I was slow to click my button. Does this mean that where there is currently 1 lot, there'll be 28 lots?
So they're going through the subdivision to combine the 2 lots that are there right now. So they have submitted for a preliminary plat and will need to get a final plat. And that would create 28 individual townhome units with combined shared open space. So like the sidewalks and things would be managed by an HOA.
Okay, and then that if we change that this way, then those stay as 28 separate lots, like going forward?
Yeah, the subdivision process would create 28 individual lots. Without the plan development approval, they could still do the same number of units. It would just need to be either an apartment building or as a condominium project instead of single family lots.
Right, so I read that it makes a difference for financing for the purchasers of that property. Is there any, when this building is obsolete and they tear it down in 60 years or however long, what could be built in its place? The same kind of building?
So they would need to go through another subdivision process unless they were proposing something that met those exact lot standards that they've created.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the applicant presentation. I think we have Jordan Atkin and John Shepard. They here? And
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Okay, yeah. Jordan, are you the main presenter?
Yeah, and we don't have a presentation prepared. We appreciate the work that Chrissy put into this. We started on this in November of 2019, so right at 2 years ago, by rezoning this from a light industrial site to the mixed use. And after engaging with some of the neighbors, we decided to go for a for sale townhome product, which is leading us here. We worked hard to comply with all the regulations of the zone, but unfortunately with how the site is, we can't move forward with this without the being able to create lots without frontage. So happy to answer any questions, but don't have a formal presentation.
Okay. Commissioners, any question for the applicant at this time on this project? I would just like you to verbalize exactly where is the new open space you've put in your landscape plan.
I think it was right at the front along 400 West, and it wasn't materially different. We did create some patios, and it was just how our landscape architect had done the calculations.
Okay. All right, any other questions from commissioners? All right, with that, we will move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. Nick, do you see any hands?
Let's give it just a moment here. If you wish to speak, please do indicate so by raising your hand. We'll give it a few minutes. I am not seeing any hands come up. Amy Thompson, have we had any emails come in since we've started the meeting?
No, we don't have any emails related to this item.
Okay, I always feel like I should give it a breather in case somebody types in. All right, seeing no hands raised and no emails to read, we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commissioners for a discussion. More questions or a motion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So this is a formerly industrial site, and so I'm wondering, actually, I don't know if that is true, but it's certainly formerly a industrial zoning. And I'm wondering, one of the people who commented on about this, wrote a letter, was concerned about pollution, and I'm wondering where you are with your environmental.
We have a clean phase 1 study for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or a motion? Been my experience when nobody wants to make a motion, it means you're not exactly happy with it. So are there standards in which that you wish to address this project to make it better? Brenda, if
I'm
you're
willing to
speaking,
make a
you're on
motion.
mute.
Since there's no other discussion, unless others want to continue discussing it.
Brenda looks like she's trying to speak, but I cannot hear
I
her.
am. I'm trying to speak.
There you go.
But I actually went out to the site today, and there is, well, the design workshop has their office just north of here, and there's other projects going on around here. So I am not as concerned as the letter writer was about the nature of the industrial area. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing. This kind of, there's a townhouse project right around the corner from here that has a very similar layout, and it seems pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. And I'm sorry, Adrian, you can do it if you want.
No, I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, such thunder. Okay, I am going to, based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve petition PLN PCM 2021-00545 with the conditions listed in the staff report. And the conditions for reference are: 1, the final building permit plan shall include 20% open space as required. And 2, the applicant shall submit a cost estimate and associated documentation assuring shared infrastructure maintenance in compliance with 21A 55.110 with the final plat application.
I will second
second.
that.
Okay, I heard Mike first, so. We have a motion by Brenda, a second by Mike. We'll go ahead and take a vote. John,
Yes.
Andreas,
I will vote yes.
okay, Amy, Amy,
Yes.
there we go, thank you. Maureen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Adrian.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. That you're good to go, Tag Townhomes. Moving on to our second agenda item. This is Alta Terra South Building Design Review at approximately 1132 East Ashton Avenue, case number PLN PCM 2021-00691. And the planner tonight for this project was Caitlin.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me and see my screen?
We can hear you, but I can't see your screen yet. There we go. Thank you. I think you have the wrong presentation up, Caitlin. That's for agenda item 3.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I was like, that one's next.
Sorry, just switching between those two. All right, we'll try this again. My apologies. All right, that's looking better. All right, well, thank you everyone for the opportunity to be with you this evening. This is a design review request for the Alta Terra Sugar House South Building. This is a proposed new mixed unit multifamily building going in at 1132 East Ashton Avenue. It will have 118 multifamily units, and it is nearly 125,000 square feet in size. They've provided 107 parking stalls where 86 are required in this building. And oftentimes when projects go through the design review process, they are allowed to request modifications to those design standards. No modifications have been requested as part of this development. However, it is located in the CSH BD1 zoning district where projects over 20,000 square feet in size are required to go through the design review process. Just to orient everyone to the site, we have Highland Drive to the right on the vicinity map. The project backs up to the Interstate 80 right-of-way, and Fairmont Park is located to the west. I have the subject property outlined in yellow on the map to the left. And as you can see, there are 2 project sites for this overall development. Both the north building and the south building are going through the design review process. The north building is still under review. It will come before the Planning Commission at a future date. So we are only considering the southern building here outlined in yellow, and that is the rendering of the building that we have on the screen. These are some photographs from the site. The largest photograph is the site itself. This used to be the site of the 24-hour fitness gym. And then photograph in the upper right corner is looking east towards Highland Drive. The bottom right photograph is looking west towards Fairmont Park. And this is the project site plan. As you can see, the building is built very close to the property lines, which is highly encouraged in this area of the city. We do have one singular vehicular access to the project, which is right in the center of the building. Having this singular vehicular access really minimizes the potential points of conflict between vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists in the area. And as part of this project, the applicants have also provided a small, well, not small, moderately sized bicycle amenity here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm moving it over the northeastern corner of the building where that bicycle amenity will be. And that will also be accessible from the public sidewalk as well as from the interior of the parking garage. The building is approximately 8 floors tall. It does meet the maximum building height requirements in this zone, and it is well under the 105-foot maximum height. As you can see, we have a good modulation of the structure here. We have the ground floor that has the ground floor glass and the building entrances. And then as the building progresses over 30 feet in height, it is stepped back by 15 feet in order to facilitate a more human-scaled perception of the development. This is the southern elevation of the project. This is the elevation that would be visible from the I-80 right-of-way. The eastern elevation, the applicants have proposed a public art mural on the northeastern portion of that wall there. Then the west elevation, as you can see, the applicant has also wrapped the glass around that corner in order to make the building appear more friendly to pedestrians in the area and people who are coming and going out of Fairmont Park. As part of the public process, we sent out a notification, and in August we met with the Sugar House Community Council, who overall voiced their support of the project. We have received a handful of public comments for this project. There's a mixture of those in favor and those in opposition, and those have been included in the staff report and in your Dropbox. At this point in time, and based off of the findings in the analysis that we've provided to you in the staff report, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the design review for the Altiterra Sugar House South building, with the condition that final approval of the signage, lighting, and landscaping plans be delegated to staff to review in accordance with the adopted standards and ordinances. This is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take those, or I'm also happy to turn the time back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Caitlin. Commissioners, any questions for staff at this point? Okay, we will move on to the presenter portion, and I believe we have Michael Augustine and Sam Watkins in attendance. Am I right?
And Mark Isaac, who's going to be our main
Yes.
presenter. Yes.
There's Mark, because he wasn't logged in separately, but I see him now.
No, we came together to sit in his office. It was easier for all of us. Madam Chair, thank you for your time. Planning Commissioners, good evening. Nick, thrilled to hear you're staffing up. And man, am I sad that Joel Patterson's leaving. I think I've worked with him for 25 of his 30 years. He is a true gentleman. What a loss. Anyway, on to our application tonight. How we got here, where we're at. First order of business for us with our design team, we introduced the design team to the Sugar House Central Business District and the Sugar House Community Design Guidelines through a walking tour of Sugar House. We walked all the existing projects, some of the older stuff, the newer stuff, the different dynamics, streetscapes, and how everything was associating with the community and what the community council has endured and enjoyed and liked, and what they haven't liked. And so we started out the process following the design guidelines with Sugar House, and then obviously what was occurring in the community at large. When Michael bought the 24-hour fitness site, it's 2 parcels. This is the parking field that is adjacent to and actually becomes the liquor store overflow parking, as you all know. It's been a difficult area for us off of Fairmont Park for safety and cleanliness and circumstances, with a little bit of the homeless there. So we're excited to get moving and clean it up and really improve that gateway to Fairmont Park. As part of our application, as Caitlin mentioned, we're going to be coming in with the second building, which is the larger building of our application in short order. But I just thought it prudent to share with you, we're working very closely with Lynn Jacobs Transportation, the engineering department, and all the parks folks. What we're trying to do is to create, for lack of a better term, a McClelland-like streetscape on 11th East and the Ashton intersection to better improve bicycle and pedestrian circulation across our block into Fairmont Park. We're really excited to build over the top of, look over the future of, and have our residents be eyes and visibility for the safety of the park and for the pure enjoyment. We spend a lot of money as a community and as a city to upgrade Fairmont Park. And I think this will be the finest, or the final catalyst component to cleaning that area up. So we're really excited to get going. We've spent tremendous amounts of time with the community council and with the land use committee. I know that Judy Short was not able to attend tonight. I'm fairly certain that she's written a positive recommendation because we've worked very, very closely with her crew on land use committee and all the good folks that you know, Amy Berry with the Sugar House Community Council. We have probably met with them, between the 2 groups, a dozen times over the past calendar year. We're really excited that we meet current codes, conditions, design, and we have their support. And with that, we will turn it over to all of you for questions of us.
Okay, I'm going to start off. So the staff report and the applicant report in what we read in our Dropbox don't match up. So I'm confused as what the real thing is. So in the applicant narrative, you say these are micro units and you'll have something like 91 parking stalls or something like that. And then Caitlin reports that they are multifamily units. In the staff report, it was studio to 2-bedroom and 116 or 118 parking stalls. So which one is right?
Yeah, no, that's right. It's 118 units. They're multifamily units. They are range from small studios to 2 bedrooms. And I believe the larger parking count number is the correct one. We exceed what the required parking is. As noted on Caitlin's report, those numbers are accurate.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know what was going on. And then I Caitlin, can you put up the west elevation? If you still have screen sharing privileges.
Yep, I will get right on that. In just one second.
Okay, as she does this, I'll talk. So again, really unsure with how the staff report was kind of not giving me a full picture. So when I look at this, is this glass on the north part of the building?
That's the west side facing Fairmont.
Right. But is the glass portion on the north side?
Yes.
And then, okay. So have you thought about wrapping the glass really from Ashton then to 11th? Because that's really the part that needs to be activated in terms of that design. Further north is a little, it's just going to be isolated and it looks kind of funny to not have it be connected as well. We're talking about the design guideline and that engagement. What are your thoughts about moving that so that it wraps around as a continuous from Ashton to 11th on the southern portion of the west side?
Southern portion of the west side. So
That's up against the freeway, Amy, and will be backed in behind that building. You see the tower that's adjacent to us, the office building that got damaged in the fire when the 3-story building burnt down?
Yeah, but aren't we talking about the building that's 24-hour fitness?
No, we're
No.
just talking about
The parking.
this south building on the south parking lot in this application. We applied for both of them and the city bifurcated the application into 2 projects, 2 buildings, Amy. So this is only about the south building and the one that's on the half-acre parking field adjacent to the liquor store.
See, and I read this whole thing and I
You're gonna see
totally.
tremendous.
That's why I was
street
really
engagement.
confused by the layouts because they didn't match up with what I know.
Yeah,
Which
you're
is
going,
that-
I was
you're
with
going to
you,
be
Amy. I was
pleased
also
with
confused.
the north building, I can assure you.
Okay, so if we're looking at the west, then we're wrapping around Ashton to that now, but the burned out or the duplex part, right?
Correct. And so what we were trying to do is just keep that glass line moving down Ashton, and it's the entire facade, it's the entire front face of the north side of the building or the Ashton facing side. And then it does wrap around the corner and to the west. We don't know what the future holds for that building. They got to do a bunch of repair because of the
Right.
fire, but we still felt that the daylighting and the facing of the west side towards Fairmont Park was critical for that streetscape and lighting.
What's going to be in that corner on the ground floor? What's your use?
It's our main leasing office, amenity, mail center, some offices. There's a pet spa. So it's an active space, which is also why we wrapped it with, storefront glasses.
All right, now I'm clear. This also makes a lot more sense now. Okay, well, I will open it up to other commissioners. Any questions you all have for the applicant at this time?
I have Commissioner Barry.
Please
I
do,
mean,
go ahead.
Chair Barry. This is Amy Burrows, and I have a question. A lot of the comments talked about that they were happy to see mixed use, like retail on the main floor, but maybe there's not. Maybe that doesn't exist. Maybe it's just amenities for the people who live there in this building on the first floor.
Yeah, that's right. They are common area amenities, private for the residents. The one thing that may become a mixed use component is the bike storage shop, maintenance shop that's on the Ashton Avenue frontage. We're working with the Sugar House Chamber of Commerce to try to find a small business entrepreneur who runs a bike shop to, take that space to activate it. But yes, in the traditional sense of commercial, we do not have any parceled out commercial spaces in this building.
And I also think, Amy, that there's a little bit of the convoluted nature of the 2 buildings. We've gone through the entire approval process with Community Council and Land Use Committee, reviewing both buildings and how they speak to one another. And we have a lot of commercial activation on the big building that's in front of the park with coffee shop and retail that's adjacent to Pibbs Exchange and across the street from the DABC. And I think that's where those positive comments in the citizen comments stem from. We're really excited to engage those streetscapes, but this is such a small building, small footprint area that we did the best we could to just glaze it and engage as far as design so that they speak to one another.
So the
think you're right.
comments
I think those
apply to
comments are about
both.
maybe building one, that part. I think you're right. Thanks.
So I have a question about your artwork. Is that face the liquor store parking lot?
Yes, it does,
And
Amy.
is that whole lot the liquor store parking?
Correct. That's what we're building over is the overflow lot, if you will, Brenda.
Okay, so is there any reason why you didn't try to do the same thing on that side that you did on the other side, and in other words, provide a storefront toward that parking garage? Because I know it's art, but it's still a kind of inactive frontage.
Yeah, behind that elevation is just the parking garage and a mechanical. So we were just trying to be thoughtful about what you would see if we had, full glazing. And because that's going to be such a prominent corner of the building, we're working with a lot of just different artists in the community and art. There'll be a lot of art, part of the south and north building, but just thought that wall would be such a prominent view to Highland Drive driving by, and we're really excited about a mural there.
And can you talk a little bit about the chevron expression that you have on the upper levels, upper floors of this building? What the material and why are we doing chevrons?
It's a masonry pattern. It's an architectural approach. It's just changing up a little bit of the brick patterns that we see throughout Sugar House. You know, the masonry requirements of the Sugar House design guidelines. And it's just a play on a little materiality just for a little different shape and feel.
So are those, I guess those are not units that, end units that have, the end units don't have a windows there, or is that a stair?
Yeah, those are stairwells. They're
Okay.
not units.
All right, so is there I couldn't really tell from the plans, I'm sorry. Is there an open space on the deck there? Is
Yes.
that above the first 3 floors?
That's right. There's a large open space that fronts the entire Ashton Avenue frontage and also dips back into the center of the building like courtyard style. So yes, that's where it exists.
Okay, and that's accessible for all the residents?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Just one question, and I know this is beyond the scope of your project, but do you know, have you heard anything about redevelopment of the liquor store site?
Adrian, you're gonna see me in the near future bringing that new liquor store on 2100 South and 850 East.
Yeah,
We don't know what DABC and DFCM's future holds on that store. I've been told that the Sugar House Market warrants 2 locations, which just
Oh, really?
sounds so funny to me in Utah. But be that as it may, my hunch is the main use, your traditional liquor store is going to move to the 2100 South location that we're doing on that
Right.
Snellgrove site.
right.
And this one's going to be converted to a wine store. That's what I've been told. That's not
Okay.
from DFCM, DABC. I'm not certain, but I have a sneaky suspicion they have a vision of something like that.
Okay, so it's likely to stay in very similar configuration.
Unfortunately, I
Yeah,
know where you were
okay.
headed.
Yeah, all right, thanks for that.
Okay, any other questions at this time?
Yeah, this is Amy. One of the questions I asked Caitlin earlier today was about, let me see, engineering, I think, in their, or transportation in their comment on this project. What page is it? It's in our staff report, section attachment H, where it talks about transportation. The first paragraph says that they would like to understand how this plan interacts with the McClellan Trail alignment. If it's going to go between the buildings on the south side of Ashton and the freeway, or along the south side of Ashton itself. The transportation commenter said, I would like to figure out if it's possible to construct the missing piece between Fairmont Park and Highland Drive as part of this development, or at least reserve space for it and orient some of the site's uses to the front, activate the trail. Any
Well,
comment on that? Caitlin said that she was going to maybe have you guys talk about that.
Well, we don't want the trail to go behind the building. We're having a hell of a time securing behind the liquor store and those buildings along there. Anyway, there's a ton of holes cut in the fence. The unfortunate part for all of us in the community is that it's federal highway and federal highway space. So it's the same thing that we did behind Park Avenue for those planning commissioners and planning staff that worked with me adjacent to it on the University of Utah Med Center. We put that pedestrian trail and bike lane that comes out of Sugar House Park on a sidewalk and in the public right of way. And that's our intention here, is that it goes down Ashton to the park and not behind. There's no room behind the liquor store, and there won't be any room behind our building between the state highways lands. And you can't do any improvements on the state highway lands. I already tried that one.
Does that, okay, I understand what you're saying. Does it construct the missing piece between Fairmont Park and Highland Drive? Does that fill that missing piece for the McClellan Trail?
Kind of, it's a riddle with the trail guys, Amy, because the truth of the matter is, if you take that trail out of Fairmont Park, stay on the south side of the Sugar House Central Business District, and you get up to Red Lobster, then what the hell do you do? The truth of the matter is our trails should be influencing Hidden Hollow, the trail system that Abir and Woodbury and the Comena boys did such a beautiful job of off of Wilmington, where we truly
Right.
have a bike and trail.
Right.
We're trying to provide trails everywhere. That is a pretty congested community. I'm not smart enough to have the right answers, but we tried like the Dickens on the adjacent block to get that trail to go somewhere. And unless you have an overpass over that 13th interchange and into Sugar House Park, you kind of get stuck in no man's land up in the Red Lobster corner. So we
Right,
have
but you can get to Wilmington from there and cut
Correct.
down off
and
of
we
Wilmington.
and
into
we
it.
created sidewalks that go around that whole block. So our take on this block and this small parcel is that you'll have that wide sidewalk and that pedestrian engagement over to the sidewalk we built on the adjacent parcels. So we do have connectivity, just not in a trail circumstance behind the buildings as they suggested.
Okay.
So I'm just going to interject here because I think you're talking about two different trails. The one that goes east-west is Parley's, that connects up to Hidden Hollow and whatnot. This
Yep.
Jordan McClelland is going north-south. So it's going through Fairmont Park. It'll come out where the dog park is on Ashton and 11. It needs to get up to Highland so it can continue south.
Well, the
And yes, it
positive
can
is-
connect to the part you're talking about across the street, but it's the missing piece that transportation for Amy Burrow's benefit is to get from Fairmont Park to Highland Drive.
Yeah.
And normally I am in favor of trails getting off the road, but regardless of the federal highway bit, that particular spot just provides too much hidden opportunities for unsafe conditions, and it's probably better for that particular spot to be on Ashton to Highland, and then it'll go south. So we're kind of conflating two trails, which is great for Sugar House. We have multiple trails, but does
And
that
we-
help you, Amy? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. With that, we will move on to the public hearing portion. You guys stick around, Mark. And I didn't see, if you are in attendance and you want to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand. I haven't, I just checked, but I didn't see any hands raised. Nick, do you know of any?
Madam Chair, I know Judy Short's not at this meeting tonight, but she did email me comments on behalf of the community council that she would like read into the record. I don't know
In
if you want
addition
do
to
that
the letter
before.
that was in the Dropbox that we read?
Yes, she did email me public comments.
Okay.
I
that's
think they're
fine.
different from the letter. Do you want me to read those now or after
let's,
the regular public hearing?
After, just because they're written, so that's fine.
Okay.
We'll take people who are in attendance first. Lost my. Nick, do you see anybody who's indicating they wish to speak?
I do not see any hands coming up or any other
Okay.
indication
Well,
that
then
anybody.
we'll have Amy Thompson read into the record the Sugar House Community Council comments, and then we'll cycle back to anybody who wishes to speak in attendance tonight. Please go ahead and click that hand in the lower right-hand corner. In the meantime, Amy, if you want to go ahead and read those into the record, please.
I am unable to attend the meeting tonight and ask that you please read aloud this statement from the Sugar House Community Council. The Sugar House Community Council Land Use Committee has reviewed this project a number of times in conjunction with a larger building across the street. This is building 2 of the Alta Terra project at 1132 Ashton Avenue. We are very pleased with this project, but also have a number of comments about how much the rents will be and whether they are really affordable or just less money because they are tiny. It would be nice to have this clarified. We always say that there aren't enough parking spaces, but in this case, the building is catering to a different customer who may not have a car, and this is located within a block of the streetcar. All parking that faces Ashton will be screened by common amenity areas. We are pleased that this building is catering to younger tenants, maybe right out of high school or college, who otherwise might not be able to afford to live in Sugar House. And the collaborative space is different from what is found in our other apartment buildings. You will see the second building soon, and the amenities in both buildings will be available to all tenants regardless of which building they live in. The design standards from our master plan, along with the developer's response, are answered by the developer. As I read over the responses and as our committee discussed, we think they have done a good job meeting the standards. We are very pleased that the longest wall in the building is only 160 feet. We have difficulty separating out one building from another because, with the exception of the land use meeting, we saw both buildings in each presentation. As the design of this project develops, we will see a lot of street activation. They have said they will put a big, well-lit walkway at the corner of Ashton and Fairmont, so it's easier for all Sugar House residents to access the dog park, and a second that crosses from the north building to the south building. I believe they said they might put some lights in the dog park, which would make it available later into the evening during the winter. There will be a mural by local artists on the park-facing wall, and we were recently contacted by a person whose grandfather opened the bowling alley in the 1940s. Her dad took over in the 1960s. It was called Fairmont Bowl. And she has a photo of the bowling alley and all the wonderful bowling competitions that used to take place there that she is willing to share. Michael Augustine, the developer, has told me he will contact her to see how he can incorporate her pictures into the development. Street lighting appears to be street lighting appears to be adequate, and the trees shown in the drawings depict the actual trees that will be planted, not a mock-up. The number of trees exceed the minimum requirement. Because of the extra wide street right-of-way for 1100 East, they will work with the city to provide wider public sidewalks and perhaps room for food trucks in this area, which would support both the residents but potentially park users as well. We appreciate the fact that no asphalt paving will be used. We ask that you approve this project. Judy Short, First Vice Chair and Land Use Chair, Sugar House Community Council.
Thank you. Any other written comments that you've received?
Yes, I do have one other comment from Elizabeth Grow. Hello, Planning Commission. My name is Isabella Grow, a community member. I like the visuals of this building. I think that the chevron patterns create an interesting and modern look to the apartment. My favorite part is both the inclusion of outdoor space within the building itself and also the setback of the higher stories, making it more human scale. I realize this might be a preemptive question, however, because we're in the middle of an affordable housing problem within Salt Lake City. So I was wondering if there's any affordable housing included within this complex. Thank you, Isabella Grow. And that concludes the public comments that have been emailed to me on this item.
Madam
Nick.
Chair, we do have one hand that has come up, and I've just realized that the hand is the icon is the same color as the background, so it's super hard to see. But William Neese, it looks like your hand's up, so I'm going to call on you, William.
Yeah, and if you,
Hi.
William, would state your name for the record, please, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm William Nessie. I'm just here attending on a different project, but I saw this one and it interested me as well. I just have a question for the applicant about, it's again, maybe outside the scope of what you planned, but one thing that looked interesting was, of course, the burned out building to the west of it. What contingencies do you have if they build a higher building next to it in terms of view to the Fairmont Park?
Okay, when we conclude the public comment period, we'll pose that question to them. Did you have any other items you wish to make a comment on during your 2 minutes?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, William. We'll make sure that they get that question. Anybody else, Nick?
So I'm going to try to make sure, just because of how hard that is to see, I'm just going to go through with a closer eye to make sure that there's nobody else who wants to speak. Give me just 1 second to click on everybody. That looks to be it.
Okay. With that, we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commissioners. First up, Mark, if you want to address that contingency question, and then we'll take it to the commissioners for discussion.
On the visuals, the building, what might happen with this adjacent property that burnt down.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for all of us when we develop these projects is we don't know what the future holds on adjacent parcels. We're actually leasing the land for that burned out area for the next couple of years for laydown area and construction and delivery. So we're a little less disruptive to the community while we build these buildings. We don't know what the future holds. It's a very small parcel. And just so that everybody knows, we actually approached them when the fire occurred to say, hey, you know, we don't know what your future plans are, but we'd love to buy it and incorporate it in our project. And that wasn't of interest to them. So you always run the risk that someone builds something big and screens our west face. There's no way to really avoid that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, discussion, questions for staff and our applicant?
Madam Chair, this is Amy. I wonder if I like the building. I think it looks good and it meets all of those requirements. It complies with all of that stuff. So I think it's interesting and likable. But I wonder if we're smarter or if we have the option to consider the whole project. If building number 1 is in building review right now, can we consider both of them at the same time instead of, I mean, I hear that the city is the one who broke them apart, but does that make our decision better if we saw them both at the same time?
Unfortunately, yeah, we have this one in front of us, and so we can't combine them unless staff has something that I don't know of how to do that. So I'll let Caitlin respond to that.
Now that's a really good question. And originally the intent was to bring both of these sites to the Planning Commission for one meeting so the project could be discussed as a whole. When the second round submittal was brought in after the first set of comments were addressed, the southern building was in a place that it could be moved forward to the Planning Commission for their review and decision. Whereas the northern building did have a few more revisions that Eric Dames, who's the planner on that building, and the development team are working through. So while it was the intent originally to bring both of the applications to the Planning Commission during one meeting, it just happened to not work out that way.
So Caitlin, I think Amy's question is it possible to combine these? To not vote on this tonight and then combining them with the other one. I think that's what she was getting at.
So this is Nick. Generally, because these properties are not adjoined, they may be related, but they're not adjoined. We have to view them as different projects that could stand on their own. And so that's what makes this different than if it were two buildings on adjacent parcels, where we can do them as one kind of development site. But because these are separated by a street, they are two completely different projects, even though they may be built to look and designed to look the same, managed by similar manners and things like that. But because they're not adjoined, we have to view them as two different applications and two different projects.
Ask the developer then, the owner, if the other building will be similar to this one, if it's going to look like it and have a lot of the same characteristics, or
No, it's actually much more sophisticated. So there aren't any chevron patterns. There's solid brick. It's very much darker in nature. There's a lot of, grays. There are earth tones, but both of the buildings, and also very intentionally and unfortunately, they're not being heard together. But again, they are two separate sort of buildings and projects. Is going to cater to a different crowd. It's a larger building. It's more fully amenitized, although these residents in this building will have access to it. And it is more of a market rate project. So the design of the building is different.
Any further discussion items or a motion from the commissioners?
I'm willing to make a motion unless there's further discussion.
I don't see or hear any indication. Go ahead, Adrian.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the design review for the Alta Sugar House South building at approximately 1132 East Ashton Avenue, petition PLN PCM 2021-00691, with the following condition of approval: that final approval of the signage, lighting, and landscaping of the development be delegated to staff to review in accordance with the adopted standards and ordinances.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Adrian and a second by Maureen. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Andreas?
I will vote yes.
John?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Thank you. Amy?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And Brenda?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We'll see you in not too long, Mark and Michael, on your next project, but you're good to go on this one. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to our third agenda item. This is the Downland Townhomes General Plan and Zoning Map Amendment at approximately 1902 South, 400 East. Case numbers PLN PCM 2021-00717 and PLN PCM 2021-00718. And Caitlin is doing double duty tonight, and her presentation looks like it's already up.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request by Paul Dowland and his team to amend the general plan from low density residential, which allows zones allowing 1 to 10 dwelling units per acre, to medium density residential, which allows 11 to 15 dwelling units per acre. And that general plan amendment is needed to facilitate a zoning map amendment from R1 5000 residential to RMF 45. The applicant is requesting these map amendments in order to facilitate an 8-unit townhome development at approximately 1902 South, 400 East. It is a corner property, and the applicant has provided a general site plan of what their proposal would look like if these if these amendments were to be approved by the City Council. Just to let everybody know, the townhomes themselves are not under consideration this evening. That was just provided by the applicants to give us a little bit of context as to why they are looking to these map amendments. This was the site of the historic Sears Mansion, a photograph of which can be found in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Unfortunately, following the March 2020 earthquake, the building was severely damaged and has since been demolished. The site now sits vacant, and you can see a photograph of the site on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. I've included a table here that lists the potential land use changes if the zoning map amendment is to be approved. New permitted uses would include a variety of dwellings ranging from single-family attached to assisted living facilities to multifamily dwellings. It would also allow nursing care facilities as a new permitted use. New conditional uses could include an adult daycare center, congregate care facility, residential support dwellings, rooming and boarding houses. Items changing from permitted to not allowed would include dormitories or fraternity or sorority homes. Those are currently allowed under the existing zoning. They would not be allowed as part of the RMF 45 zone. And then changing land uses from conditional to permitted would include community gardens, accessory dwelling units, assisted living facilities, and small congregate care facilities. Now, we know that the applicant does intend to construct those 8 units. However, if the zoning map amendment is approved, then they would not be married to that idea, and any one of these uses could potentially be located onto that site. Potential lot and bulk changes. We have the adopted building height, setback, building coverage, all of those lot standards for both the existing R1 5000 zone as well as the proposed R45 zoning district. I guess one of the largest differences would be that the allowed building height would jump from 28 feet for pitched roofs to up to 45 feet in this zone. And then the maximum building coverage would go from 40% to 60% if those map amendments were to be adopted. As part of our public process, we did mail out an early notification letter back in August. In September, we met with the Liberty Wells Community Council. It was a fairly small meeting, so we didn't get a large amount of feedback from it. But as time progressed, we did begin to receive dozens of public comments as part of this process. Copies of those have been included in your staff report and in your Dropbox, and a few more of them have come in today since the publication of the staff report. The majority of these public comments are in opposition to this request. There are a few of them that are in support of it. But based on the findings and the analysis of the zoning map amendment considerations that are outlined in 21A.50.050 of our zoning ordinance, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a negative recommendation of these requests to the City Council, primarily because the master plans in the area and a lot of our other planning documents, such as Plan Salt Lake, recommend for higher density uses to be located closer to areas that are readily served by transit. And they encourage incremental density increases within existing neighborhoods. And staff made the determination that this is just a little bit more than an incremental density change. So those are the reasons for that recommendation, and we have outlined the remainder of those considerations in the staff report for your consideration. This is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Any questions for staff? No? Okay. We will move on to the applicant. I think I only saw Tom Jolly in the list. Are you here, Tom?
I am. Can you hear and see me?
I can hear you. Do you have a presentation you need presenter privileges for?
No, I think I sent Caitlin a couple of exhibits we might want to have her show here in a moment.
Okay, Caitlin, do you have access to those? You can just nod your head.
Yep, I do. I will share those now.
Okay, well, Mr. Jolly, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. Go ahead, the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. We have really no formal presentation tonight. We're hoping to engage in just a dialogue with you because we know that this is a wrestle type project. And Paul Dallin, the owner and developer of this project, has asked me to speak on his behalf tonight. He apologizes. His flight was delayed getting back into Salt Lake, and I believe he's on a plane right now. And so my name is Tom Jolly. I'm with the law firm of York, Cowan, Guyman. Caitlin, thank you for the presentation. Commissioners, this council is, this planning commission is no stranger to these type of projects and wrestling with some of the newer plans like Plan Salt Lake City and the city housing plans. We know that there was a similar project back in, I believe, 2019 or 20, the Cleveland Court project in Liberty Wells as well. This is just kind of a straightforward project. This is a vacant lot. My client purchased this lot in 2020, and talking with the prior owners, I believe they were engaging in dialogue with the city about possibilities for development here. When we reviewed the master plan, fully acknowledged that the Central Community District is subject to, among other planning documents, the Central Master Plan, which provides for preservation of historic structures and neighborhoods. And that's certainly an important goal. Yet we note that the Central Master Plan was created and adopted in 2005 when market dynamics were much different and may even conflict with more modern goals and policies of the city as adopted in the current master plan and the city housing plan relating to creating diversity of housing types. We would like to engage with the Planning Commission and with staff on, my client has engaged an architect, John L. Davis of Layton Architects and Layton Davis Architects. I don't believe there are renderings available, but this type of project really requires implementing the goals and objectives and policies, as adopted in the city's planning documents. But it's a real balancing act between looking at some of the existing rules and regulations while exercising some level of flexibility to achieve and responsive change that will encourage the market to develop these type of diverse and affordable housing units. And so that's kind of where we're at. I don't think we have a lot of sexy stuff to present. We just feel that given the current goals of the city and a lot of your planning documents and the master plan, this project could be tweaked to, we're hoping, fit within some of your goals to provide what we would call this missing middle housing component. And Caitlin, maybe you can put up this one little, can you put up the 3 to 5 unit or 3 to 4 unit exhibit? Planning Commission members, if you do a drive-through of this neighborhood, it's really shows various types of over the years multifamily duplexes, triplexes, different apartments that have been built over the years. And if you do just go to the Salt Lake Assessor's parcel map and do a simple search of unit type, land type, and go into and put in 113-3 to 4 units, you're going to see that all these green areas are areas within Liberty Wells close to the subject property, which is the red dot. And you just see all these units that are being assessed, or these homes that are being assessed as multiple units. And I called the assessor's office and asked, well, how is this possible? And they gave me a variety of reasons. They could be all separately metered, these different rooms. They could have separate mailboxes, MLS recordings, and those type of things. So it looks like people are basically using some of these single family, what's supposed to be single family residences, and they're using them for other uses as well, which brings up interesting considerations that there's no adequate off-street parking and these types of things. Our units, on the other hand, as the staff report notes from engineering, these will have underground parking. We will have no off-street parking. But I'm just going to open it up to the commissioners to ask us questions.
Okay. I will start. Please give me your reasoning why you're asking for RMF 45 versus some other density zone that like RMF 35 or something else. What led you to this zone that you're asking for?
Well, this was between Paul and John Davis, the architect. They had come up with this proposal to get a minimum density of 8 units on this project, which they felt would pencil better. But I will readily offer up right now, the developer is willing to negotiate with this council or with this commission, to consider RFM at 35. And, I wasn't sure, but, would this property be open for form-based zoning, such as the urban neighborhood? I know that was kind of a hot button on the Cleveland Court project a few years ago. But that's our answer. We
Okay.
if you look right down, literally across the street to the southeast, there's the St. Joseph Villas, which is zoned RFM at 35.
Yes, it is. Commissioners, any other questions at this time for the applicant?
Have you looked at just subdividing the property under current zoning and how many lots would you get?
Great question. And I wish Paul was here to answer that. To my knowledge, they have not considered it, but I mean, they could, I believe, subdivide the lot into 2. It would meet would meet zoning. But again, my client is not. I mean, if you do that and you apply, what they paid for the lot, and then, an average 3,000 square foot home with a price of, $300 per square foot, which is kind of common here in the area right now. You're looking at, almost $1 million home right off the bat. And so he was interested to see if the planning commission and the staff would engage in dialogue to see if this, given it's a corner lot and there are a lot of the RFMF 35 is close by, if this could be something that we could talk about.
Any other questions at this time for the applicant?
What are the chances that you would just build back that beautiful mansion? It's kind of a heartbreaker that went down. I'm just kidding.
Amy, that is it is a beautiful mansion, and my client is not planning on building that type of home on this particular corner lot.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to the public hearing portion, but Mr. Jolly, stick around because we'll cycle back to you after that, where we'll probably have more things to discuss at that point. Okay, we're going to open the public comment period. If you are here and you wish to speak, there's a couple things I just want to go over. One, raise your hand at the bottom right-hand corner so Nick can call on you. When you have been unmuted, please state your name for the record. You'll get 2 minutes, and given the number of people I've seen in the attendee list, I will be monitoring that fairly closely. This is not a question and answer period, but during your 2 minutes, you are more than welcome to ask questions. I will write them down, and then after the public comment period has closed, I will pose those questions to staff and/or applicant, but we will not stop to do a back and forth Q&A. But you should certainly feel free to use your 2 minutes how you wish. All right, Nick. And then if you do not want to wish to speak, but you do want comments written into the read into the record, go ahead and email planning.comments@slcgov.com. All right, Nick, do you
Right.
see anyone here from the community council, which would be Liberty Wells?
I do not recognize the name, but we'll just go down the list, and if somebody from is representing the community council, if they just let us know when we unmute them, we can go from
Okay.
there. So
Perfect.
starting just in alphabetical order, the first name is Cindy Cromer. Cindy, you are unmuted.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cindy Cromer. I've tried to purchase investment property in this neighborhood and am very familiar with the non-conforming density properties. I've also been in 2 land use battles with St. Joseph's Villa. And I know the previous owner who did the work on the Sears Mansion. So first off, I support the staff report, the uses that would be allowed in the RMF 45, the lot coverage, and the height of a potential development are all inappropriate for this neighborhood. To the issue of non-conforming density, which showed up on the county assessor's map, that makes the properties more valuable as income property. And if you proceed with this kind of rezoning, then the existing or naturally occurring affordable units will be wiped out by redevelopment because the land is so valuable now. The saga of the St. Joseph's Villa is a very ugly story, full of the city's mistakes and St. Joseph's Villa's willingness to violate its own master plan. But the thing that I want to tell you that nobody seems to know about is that this property has a soils and a water problem. About 25 years ago, the owner asked me for advice on bog plants. Now that's a pretty unusual request in Salt Lake City. So I said, why do you need bog plants? Well, she had a spring on the north side in the huge north side yard. And it turns out that there was an old well. It's about 25 feet deep. She put a liner in it. She asked all sorts of people for permission, and they said it was just fine for her to use the water. So she proceeded to water her yard for years with the water from the well. I believe that well has now been capped, but that is a substantial obstacle to redevelopment at this site. And
Okay,
I
Cindy,
think
that's
everybody should be
time.
aware of it.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Appreciate your comments.
All right. Next up, we have Darlene Cafusi. Darlene, you are unmuted.
Thank you so much. My name is Darlene Cafusi, and I live directly, well, kitty corner from the lot that's that they're trying to have changed. We have a 5-year-old autistic son, and just having that much more people in the neighborhood, he likes to ride his bike everywhere, and just changing the whole infrastructure, I feel, of our neighborhood. I love Liberty Wells the way it is. I've lived there my whole life, born into this neighborhood. I live in the home that I grew up in. My grandparents live down the street. I have a sister that lives on the other corner. So much family around here, and just to have I feel like it'd just be a huge eyesore and wouldn't add to the community. Having that, I hate the new apartments that are on 21st and 4th East. I wish I would have got something for that when that was happening, but at least on 21st, it's there on that busy street. But I just feel like it's bringing in more traffic and just more people. And Liberty Wells is just a walking area where everybody walks around, and it just has that beautiful old feel to it, whereas if you're going to build in there, if they were to build it just another big home, I wish they would build something like the Sears mansion that was there before, but I know that's not possible. But just something to add to what our neighborhood already has, not all these big huge modern things that they're starting to add everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Doyle Buchanan. Doyle, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
My name is Doyle Buchanan, and I live on Ramona Avenue, which is about half a block south of the proposed development. And I joined this meeting to learn more about the development. I'm tentatively in favor of the development of this parcel for the following reasons. The current lot is an eyesore. I run or walk by the lot on a regular basis. I like the old house that was there and would have preferred it had not been damaged by the earthquake. And I know that Sugar House has seen a lot of development, and I would like to see Liberty Wells get some of that development as well. I think it revives the community. According to the notice displayed on the property, the proposed buildings are townhomes, which means that the owners of the homes or the buildings would actually live in them and would be more likely to take an interest in maintaining and improving the area. And I think this is preferable to building rental units, which the owner does not occupy. So I'm definitely in favor of putting townhomes that would be owner occupied instead of rental. And I believe that the construction of the townhomes would increase the property values of the surrounding area as it has done in Sugar House. So I am not in favor of a proposed development being much taller than the mansion that previously occupied it, or the assisted living facility across the way. So whatever that height is, I believe that's probably an appropriate height to not go over. So these are that's my concerns and my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doyle.
Next up is Jeff Bear. Jeff, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I agree with the staff recommendation to deny this proposal. And Mr. Jolly mentioned the previous owners had planned to develop the property. I'm good friends with both Craig and Lance, and I will want to clarify what their development was. And that was for 2 detached homes. They subdivided the property. It's now 2 lots and not a single lot. So that alone doubles the density. The developer is proposing an 800% increase in density, which is just inappropriate for this neighborhood. And it violates the Central City Master Plan. Also, in reference to the St. Joseph's Apartments across the street, I'm a direct neighbor to that. And when the villa wanted to build a 4-story development on the opposite corner, the city council unanimously voted against that. And in that denial, they cited the St. Joseph Apartments on 400 East. And Soren Simonson said that that was a bad neighbor to the neighborhood. They also said that if that had been proposed at that time, that they would deny it. So I am definitely against this massive increase in density. I think as the previous owners had planned, they subdivided into 2 lots. It's my understanding it is now 2 lots. And I believe that the appropriate use to meet the surrounding neighborhood, community, and development is 2 homes. And I strenuously encourage the council to deny this zoning change request.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bear.
All right, next up is Mary PL. Mary?
Thank you for the opportunity. This is Mary Peely. I live about, and technically work because I work from home now, block and a half. I live over on Hollywood. So I walk this neighborhood constantly. The mention of possible non-conforming, I would say there are very few things that would even match this structure or form use in this neighborhood. It is interesting that, you know, the use would be called out when they just aren't even in line with what's being requested here. Additionally, I would further Cindy Cromer's comment on that this is Liberty Wells for a reason. The 2100 South project that was also mentioned, it did not become before the board because it was not an amendment change. There was no zoning change. They had to delay and rebuild and restructure multiple times because of the water impact and flooding. That project is still currently dumping water into the our waterways, onto our roads. And so this is a project that if to build a foundation for this kind of structure, they're going to run into the same issue, especially with the known wells in the area. I apologize, my child has decided he needs me at this point. On the working from home, I think this neighborhood is filled with single mothers and single families and parents. Many of the people in this neighborhood are working from home because they cannot afford to work elsewhere. They're in pandemics. Some of these pieces are a part of that. Is Tom Jolly yourself had addressed that some of the reasons they were given was that maybe there was an LLC or something to that. I may be misquoting the language for it, but that people have given tax rates basically onto their address, overlaying their home usage. I think that's probably more accurate for the neighborhood. It's been well
Haley,
noted
that's
that.
time. Your time's up. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, just a reminder to those who have already spoken, if you click on that hand icon again, it'll lower your hand. So we make sure that we don't miss anybody. But next up, we have Darlene Cafusi. Darlene, you are unmuted. Darlene, can you hear us?
And maybe we can move on to the next one. And if Charlene is having trouble being heard, then she can.
Oh,
There we go.
I am now available to talk. Thank you. I'm unmuted. I apologize. So yes, my name is Darlene Cafusi, and I am a resident in the Liberty Wells area too, on Ramona Avenue. So my property is, I guess it would be, my backyard will be kitty corner to the proposed development. And as a resident, I agree with the other residents here. I really appreciated the staff's report. I was able to look at it today, and I also wrote a letter, so that's in your files. I didn't know about the ordinance and the city planning and all of that, but it does make sense. I purchased my home. I'm a first-time home owner prior to the pandemic, and I love my neighborhood. There may be rentals in the area, but people have lived in these homes for many, many years, and I know all of my neighbors most of my neighbors on the area of Ramona where I live. I had 45 trick-or-treaters come this last October, which means that it's a very family-oriented and walkable area. And I do agree with the report that 8 units, looking at the proposed plan, I know we're not, to consider that, but if there's 3 bedrooms even in an 8-unit each, it would be, 24 or more people on that third of an acre, which would really highly impact, as well as the height restriction or the height allowance that the new zoning would allow. This comes into play with not only traffic and noise, but lighting, things that I guess would impact our neighborhood in terms of, the trash and the garbage collection and all of that. Our neighborhood is very walkable. The residents, even in St. Joseph's Villa, they come out and they sit in front of their apartments. It's tree lined, and buses don't go along 400 East. And so it really is quiet and peaceful, and this would be very impactful. And I guess as a homeowner and resident.
Charlene.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate them.
All right. Next up is Taylor Anderson. Taylor, you are unmuted.
Great, thanks. Hey, so I have more of a question. I'm really, this is my neighborhood as well. I live in Liberty Wells. And I've been on the fence about this, as my friends have who live nearby and on Westminster. It was interesting when I was looking for information when it was announced that the property turned over. Dowland said they were open to talking with the city about a different type of zoning. So I'm just curious how we got to the end zone here now that we're before the Planning Commission for a decision on what the applicant even admits might not be the right fit. Like if that was even the right thing, because optically it just seems very problematic. It doesn't seem like it's going to go well. And so I guess I'm curious. It's back to Amy's first question. Why RMF 45? I would love to hear if there was more explanation, but from judging the only documents that we have, 8 boxes on a piece of paper, it looks like there's no street engagement. There's not really much to go on. So would love to hear if the applicant has any more information on what a different zoning type might be for the property, what this could maybe turn into, And sorry to ask a question during public comment, but hey, that's what I do. Bye.
No, that is perfectly fine. I'll pose those questions at the end of the public comment period.
All right. Next up is Vincent G. Vincent, you are unmuted.
Hello, my name is Vincent and I'm a homeowner on Westminster Avenue. I live 248 feet away from this parcel and studied architecture and planning at the University of Utah. If the people of Liberty Wells had it their way, the parcel would become a community garden. No one wants to see anything built there. I remember the first time I saw the Sears Mansion on the corner of Westminster Ave and 400 East, one of the most beautiful homes I had ever seen. The vernacular architecture was perhaps the pinnacle of Mormon settler architecture and added to the community's sense of place and identity. I loved the home so much, I sent the listing photos of the Sears Mansion from the Facebook page for the love of old homes to friends and family who were astounded by the preservation and character. The magnificent architecture no longer stands and is greatly missed, and anything after this is a compromise. The home stood in its red brick Victorian glory, set back 60 feet from Westminster Avenue and 50 feet from 400 East. Neighboring homes are set back about 30 feet from the road, and St. Joseph's Villa is also 30 feet from the road, allowing for the historical tree-lined character of the neighborhood to persist. In order for the new development to remotely enhance the community, the new buildings need to be set back at least 30 feet. Right now, the plans show the building setback from the road only 12 feet. The proposed plans do not have a legitimate front porch or yards. Instead, the plan shows a two-car garage and a door with a staircase leading upstairs to the house. Essentially, under their current proposed plan, the entire first floor of the development is to be sterile garages and a driveway. This is not in line with Liberty Wells. Most homes in Liberty Wells are one story, maybe two, where all activity and interactions take place on the ground level with windows facing the streets and yards.
Hey, Vincent, that's time. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have William. I think you said Nesse was your last name. William? You're unmuted.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for letting me talk. I live on Westminster Avenue, about 200 or 300 feet from the property, and I'm here to just voice support, general support for construction of higher density homes. And although I understand many of my neighbors see that as out of character for our neighborhood, and it certainly is a little bit out of character, except for, of course, we have a very tall rehab hospital that's extremely large right next to us already. So I don't think it's that out of character. Two, I think in my position on support for this change of zoning is that we're living in probably the strangest time I've ever seen for housing. Many of the people here speaking, I'm almost sure of it, including myself, could not afford the home that we purchased even several years ago. And I bought my home 5 years ago, and there's no way I could afford this home. So if it gets turned into 1 or 2 lots, we hear the developer and $300 a square foot, that's going to be $1 million home. You let that sink in. The housing crisis we have now it's historic, it's epochal, and while it might not affect me or those that are already owning property here, it will certainly affect future generations going on forever for quite a while. So I think we really need to think about, press the panic button here on what housing is going to do to our community if we don't provide more density. There's density all around us, but Liberty Wells hasn't participated in that because of an archaic planning document from before the time when this was an issue. So I really think it's time for a change. And I do that. I'm a university professor. I talk to my students every day, and this is weighing on them very heavily. Many of them have written off places, big cities, because this is just not going to happen. Salt Lake City is already beyond what's within their reach.
Okay,
and
William,
I think we should all be very scared.
Would you state your name for the record?
William Nesse.
Nessie. Okay, thank you so much for your comments.
All right. Going back through the list, it looks like Bailey Cooper has their hand up. So Bailey, I'm going to unmute you.
Hey, my name is Bailey Cooper. I live in Liberty Wells, and I currently rent my house because I've seen the absurd property values in the area. I would love to own a home in the area. This is where we'd like to be. I've talked with a lot of peers and a lot of people, just friends and whatnot, and we see the value in adding more properties to our neighborhood, and just giving people an opportunity to live in an area that we see, growth potential for not only ourselves, but our future families. I know myself, I'm planning on getting married and having a child within the next year or two. And what we could afford, we'd be on the east side or the west side of 15. And we look at the schools and just the quality of living, and it's obviously just not up to par for what we'd like for our family. And Sugar House is very diverse. And if you look at Utah, we're not a very diverse state. I'm from Atlanta, and we just want to have our family grow up in an area that, they can experience culture and being around people in the neighborhood with a sense of camaraderie. And I was reading through some of these emails that you guys received, and it says it'll take away from the community or not enhance the character of the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, it's the people that make the neighborhoods and not the actual structures. And so I just want people to take note of that and realize, like, no matter what's built, the people are going to be the same and nothing's going to change. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey.
Right. It looks like all of the hands that are still up have spoken, and I'm not seeing any additional hands come up. So I do think that we received, an email. Amy, is that right?
Yeah, so we have an email from the Liberty Wells Community Council, Sarah Edelman, and I can read that into the record. Dear Caitlin, the Liberty Wells Community Council conducted a neighborhood survey concerning the proposed rezone of the property at 1902 South 1400 East from residential R1 5000 to RMF 45. 78% of the residents who responded to the survey are opposed to the rezoning, citing concerns about the allowed height. The height of up to 45 feet tall with the additional allowances of up to 55 feet during the design review process would be out of place in a neighborhood with predominantly single-family homes and two-story apartment complexes. The Liberty Wells Community Council is not opposed to increased housing density. We have supported several projects along the corridors of our community, including the Capitol Home Apartments and the Coachman's rezoning request on State Street, as well as several development projects along 900 South and 2100 South. However, we do not support the rezoning of this property, given the existing character of their surrounding neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration, Liberty Wells Community Council.
No other emails, Amy?
We do not have any other emails at this time.
And I also see no additional hands raised.
Right.
Okay. Given that, we will close the public hearing. We're going to bring it back to the commission for a discussion. And I think Taylor Anderson's question is probably best suited for Caitlin. So Caitlin, when the applicant came to you and signed to you, did you look at other zones that might be applicable, or is the RMF 45 strictly what he needed for density? Because we don't have an actual plan. Like, we, as commissioners, we're not looking at any specific plan. We're looking at what could happen in this zone. Is it appropriate for this area? But what else did you look at, Caitlin?
That's correct, Madam Chair. So when this application was submitted, it was submitted with the context that these 8 townhome units were the ultimate goal for the site. And therefore the application came in as, we want this zone for this reason. We want to build these 8 townhome units, and this is the zone that will be able to facilitate that.
And what kind of density could they get in an RMF 35?
That is a good question. I think the density would be similar. Ultimately, the bulk requirements for the RMF 35 zone would be the major change there. So the maximum building height for that zone would be 35 feet instead of the 5 feet, which is allowed in the RMF 45 zone.
Do you know, because we know St. Joseph Villa is RMF 35. Is it 35 feet tall?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that right off the top of my head, but I'm happy to look into our records and see if I can find that information for you.
That would be great. And then I don't know, the form-based codes is still this enigma for me, but what is the criteria? I'm assuming it's really only along transit lines and not appropriate for this location, but this was brought up by the applicant and I don't know the answer. What is it?
That's another good question, and unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience in working with form-based codes in Salt Lake City, so I would have to defer to someone on the management team as to which context those types of zones would fit best with.
Yeah, I'm happy to help answer that. Generally speaking, our form-based codes have been developed and written to apply in places that are either already a mixed use area or that have some infrastructure that supports different modes of transportation other than the car. So where they're mapped currently are mostly around Bacon Sugar House along the S line. There's the Central 9th neighborhood. And then there's a few other places where some different elements of the form-based codes have been used. For example, the FBUN1, which allows up to townhomes, things like that, is mapped in some other places, including one site that is in Liberty Wells, the Cleveland Court project that the Planning Commission saw a couple years ago at this point. And then there's some also on the along the near the Jordan River off of 900 West next to one of the parks where there are some townhomes as well, and in some other portions of 900 West around 900 South. So fairly contextual. Right now, our form-based codes are written to take a market-based approach to parking, meaning there's no minimum parking requirements. And so that's why they're generally mapped fairly close to high frequency transit.
Okay, Caitlin, even though we don't have a specific project before us, one of the commenters brought up this issue of setbacks and like setbacks. And I live in an RMF 35. And so I'm pretty sure a setback for an RMF 35 or 45 is much less than 30 feet. But is there a setback for that zone from street frontage?
There is. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. I actually included that in our lot and bulk table.
Yeah, I think it's we definitely have that, but the public doesn't always get to read the whole report. So if we could address that, I think it'll help our discussion.
Absolutely. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So keep in mind this is a corner lot, and the proposed RMF 45 zone, the front setback is 20% of the lot depth, but no more than 25 feet. As for the side yards and the corner side yards, single family attached dwellings are 10-foot setback. So it could range in setback from 10 feet to no more than 25 feet, but it would not mirror that 30-foot setback that the member of the public brought up.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, other commissioners, will you want to weigh in and the discussion
Madam
questions?
Chair, there was a
Yes.
question about what density could be built under the RMF 35. How that
Yeah,
density,
yes.
the lot is just over a couple hundred feet over 14,000 square feet. And how density is calculated in the RMF 35 zone is that you get 3 units for the first 9,000 square feet of lot area, and then each additional unit up to 11 additional units requires 2,000 square feet per unit. So this property could have 5 units on it under the RMF 35.
Okay, thank you. 5 units. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions and discussion?
That's a very interesting calculation, Nick. The applicant did not ask for that, though. And that's not what we're reviewing tonight. And we really don't have the capability of negotiating that at a planning commission meeting. So, so I think in general that I agree with almost all the comments made, actually, including the ones that suggested that we need more density and we need more housing, even though these units, although they might not be $1 million, they're going to be $400,000 for sure. So but that's neither here nor there. We need, we do need more housing. But I don't feel like this has been thought through very well on the part of the applicant. And so therefore I will be opposing this as well.
Any other thoughts to discussion?
I just wanted to jump in and say I have very similar feelings where I very much want to see more density in our community and more housing available, but I worry that this may be stretching things a little too far and too quickly for the neighbors. So I am hoping for something that's a little more thought through from the developer.
Thank you, Mike.
Amy, were you going to give the applicant a chance to respond to any of the comments during the public hearing?
Well, a lot of I wrote down stuff. Sure, we can. I didn't see anything that was different from what he had brought up as wanting to discuss. But Mr. Jolly, if you want to take a moment, a couple of minutes to address any of the comments that stood out to you, please feel free.
Sure. Well, thank you everyone who showed up and voiced comments. I always enjoy these type of meetings as I represent developers across the state. And I think it's a critical part of the process. I think from our perspective, we can create a product here that that the community could be proud of. And we, in hindsight, probably should have done a better job communicating with Caitlin and staff on the appropriate zoning. But this has been very illustrative for me in particular, and I'll convey it to Paul. And because I think that it's a real wrestle. I mean, and the Planning Commission has to deal with this quite frequently. Salt Lake needs more affordable housing, but then you have folks that don't want it, and then there's the preservation portion of it. So there's no easy answer. I guess what we're looking for tonight would be, can we continue a dialogue with staff and the commission on these important issues?
Okay, thank you. I think that is entirely up to you as the applicant. Before the Planning Commission tonight, we are looking at what type of a recommendation we would give the City Council for these 2 items, for the plan map amendment and the zoning map amendment. So you are free to continue your dialogue with staff regardless of that. commissioners, if you have no other further comments or discussion points, I would be looking for a motion, and there are two separate motions that need to be made, so one at a time. But Amy, did you raise your hand that you had wanted to make a comment?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go for it.
Does the general plan map need to come first? Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter, just one at a time.
Okay. Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a negative recommendation to the City Council for the requested general map amendment from low-density residential, 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre, to medium-density residential, 15 to 30 dwelling units per acre, for 0.33 acres at approximately 1902 South, 400 East, with the following finding. Number 1, the requested map amendment is not consistent with the considerations within section 21A.50.050 of Salt Lake City's ordinances.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I, this is Nick, can I just ask a question? It seemed like the applicant was somewhat open to perhaps modifying their application. And I just want to make sure that the commission knows all of what their options are. If you're making a recommendation,
Yeah, please do. Please.
then it goes on to the city council. If the applicant wants to, you do also have the option to table this proposal to give the applicant some time to perhaps meet with planning staff to discuss options in other zoning districts so they can amend their application to a different zone that might reflect some of the comments and be more of an appropriate scale as to what I've heard the Planning Commission talk about. And if that's something that the Planning Commission has a desire to do, then maybe before, as part of the discussion on the motion, that be considered. What happens if you make a recommendation, then basically all the negotiation moving forward is with the council and not necessarily the planning staff, because we have to forward your recommendation onto the council. So I just want to put that out there so that people are aware of what that process looks like based on whatever the motion the commission decides.
Thank you for that reminder. And yeah, so we can open it up for a discussion because that is an option.
So, Nick, I'm sorry, I have a question. The applicant, if we do a negative recommendation, does it have to go to city council, or can the applicant withdraw at that point?
The applicant can always withdraw, and then they'd be
Okay.
starting over with an application if they do that.
Okay,
But we are obligated to forward your recommendation to the city council.
I understand. If the applicant starts over, does that a significant increase in time for them to get approval for what they want to do?
Yeah, the process starts at the beginning.
Okay, so it would be better for the applicant if we actually tabled it.
Maybe, may I speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jolly, because we're speaking to the motion, so it's just for commissioners. But
It's fine.
sorry, that's a procedural one. Sorry for that. Yeah, we do have the option to table, and we have done that in the past. We have done that in the past many times.
We have. Right,
Hey, this was my first motion. You're killing me.
It was wonderfully.
It's been seconded, but can I withdraw it? I don't know. What do you want me
Yes,
to
you
do?
can.
Okay, I withdraw my motion.
Well, you don't have to do that just yet.
Okay. Oh, you give me the signal when I'm supposed to do something.
Okay. Thank you. That was a wonderful motion by you, Amy. So it was nothing to do with you. And it was my fault for not remembering that we have this option before us. So we can have a discussion to the motion. If commissioners are indicating that they prefer tabling, then we can cycle back and do a different motion.
Is this an appropriate time to ask why we didn't consider tabling the other one, the south building, so we could look at the south building and north building together? Is that an impossibility to table it for that reason? Is like the reasoning why you're tabling stuff matter?
Yeah, it does. And
Okay.
so there's a difference between this type of application, which is a legislative matter, versus that prior application, which is an administrative matter.
Commissioners, where are you feeling?
I personally would be in favor of tabling to see if we can come up with an alternative. Or a way to at least tie a development plan to the rezone, so we're not open-ended in our approval. I know that that's not always looked upon favorably, but I think this is a situation where density could be appropriate, but it's an open-ended rezone may not be the best path to get the kind of product that I think we would want to see in the neighborhood we want to see.
I'm favorable to tabling also.
So, Madam Chairman, can I make a motion?
Well, we have an offer to withdraw first. Like, Amy Burrows, would you go ahead and say it?
Yeah, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for making it.
No, it was perfect, and I hope.
No, it was really, it was well made.
Just a point of clarification, Nick, are we going to have to do 2 separate motions to table both items?
No, I think that you can do it as one, as long as you're referencing both items. It's a little bit different because you're not making
Okay.
you're asking for it to come back.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. Brenda?
Yes, in the application of PLN PCM 2021-00717 and PLN PCM 2021-00718, Madam Chair, I move that we table these this set of applications.
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion to table from Brenda and a second from Sarah. And say no discussions to that. Let's take a vote. Maureen?
Yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andreas?
Yeah, I do want to say there is some good potential for discussion in this particular case, and that's the reason why I think tabling is good. So I will vote yes.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. So we voted to table these 2 items to allow the applicant and staff to have time to further discuss options that may be more appropriate. Okay, with that, we have finished the public hearing portion of our meeting, and most of the public can have the ability to get off now, but we still have an ethics conflict of interest training. And I believe Sarah will probably wish to say goodbye since she doesn't need to sit in for this.
I am ethical enough. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Okay, good night. All right, with that, Hannah, if you want to take the training lead.
Thank you. Let me pull up my slides here. Oh, it's not, it's not letting me share. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so tonight, thanks for having me, Commission. We are going to review just an introductory level to some of the ethics regulations that apply to the Commission tonight. And feel free as we move along to interrupt me if you have questions, or I can take questions at the end. I don't think I can see hands very well though, so I don't know if Nick or the chair can help sort of moderate if there are questions along the way. I will say though, if you're looking for an opinion about your own particular circumstance, that's probably a conversation to have offline. These ethics questions are very fact specific, and the law is fairly convoluted and nuanced. So it'd probably be worth just following up outside of the meeting for your particular situation. But if you have general questions as we move along, feel free to interject. Let's see if I can go to the next slide here. Here we go. Okay, so we have a few things that are going to govern this topic. We have the Utah Municipal Officers and Employees Ethics Act under Title 10, Chapter 3, the 1300 series of state law. We also have the Salt Lake City Code, Chapter 44 of Title 2. And then we also have Planning Commission policies and procedures. So the reasoning behind these laws, rules, and regulations are to establish conduct for officers and employees, including commission and other board members, to require proper disclosure of certain conflicts, and in certain circumstances to prohibit participation or to prohibit certain conduct. The idea behind them is to build public trust, so the public knows that there aren't sort of any behind the scenes, you know, sleight of the hand deals going on. So the law does apply to you. That's why we're here tonight talking about this. So regardless of the fact you may or may not receive compensation for your position, these rules still apply. So when you are appointed, there's certain disclosures you need to make. Rather than sort of get into all of the nuance, the city does have a conflict of interest form that I'm sure you've been provided and have filled out. If you haven't, contact planning staff who can get that for you. But at the time of appointment, you fill out this form. It's pretty basic. It asks the basic questions to cover the type of conflicts that need to be disclosed. It will ask you things about other employment that you may be involved in, other financial interests you may have in companies, and that does include your personal interests and your immediate family, so a spouse or a child. So you do have to disclose all other employment interests and financial interests that is substantial, which is defined as 10% interest or more in that entity that is regulated or does business with the city. My advice generally is, if you're not sure, disclose the interest, because in most cases, disclosure is going to be enough to satisfy the legal requirements. Although, as we'll review in a little bit, there are times that disclosure isn't enough. So as we talk about the rules on when you have to disclose and when you need to recuse yourself, etc., these terms are important: financial interest and a professional interest. Those are defined under city code in that chapter 2.44. A financial interest is defined as owning 10% or more between you, your spouse, or your minor children in a business entity, or if you're an officer, director, trustee, partner, employee, or manager in a business entity. So if you are employed by another company, which I assume most of you are said to have a financial interest in that company. Professional interest is a little more convoluted. It's resulting in a direct or immediate professional benefit, and or where you have a fiduciary duty with respect to the professional interest. That's different from the public in general. So there'll be times that applicants come before the commission, and you as a commission member are you know, ready and willing to make a decision on the application before you. If you have a financial or professional interest in that application, then you do need to publicly disclose that during the meeting. So you'll disclose that publicly to all the commission members at the time. You also disclose that interest to the mayor. Most of the time you've already done so on your conflict form, but in the event something came up that wasn't on there, you'll just disclose during the meeting and follow up with a disclosure to the mayor. The important thing to note is if the interest is financial, meaning you are employed or a trustee of that company, or you have a financial interest in the company greater than 10%, then you also need to recuse yourself from the discussion and the vote. Your rules go a little bit further even than city code and state law, and it requires not just the recusal from voting on the item, but it actually requires you to leave the meeting unless the majority of the commission votes for you to remain in the meeting. So sometimes the commission may vote to have you remain in the meeting to make sure that a quorum is maintained. In that sort of situation, you'll just go ahead and abstain from voting. But generally speaking, if your interest is financial, you recuse yourself and leave the meeting. All right. So with respect to outside employment, which I assume most of you hold, because I don't think this is a very well-paying job, you can't hold outside employment that's incompatible with your city duties. That's not defined, obviously, somewhat vague, but if you feel there's a potential conflict there, feel free to reach out and discuss that. All right, the next set of slides, we're going to talk about acts that are prohibited. So these are things that commissioners can't do. So in this situation, disclosure is not enough, and you just can't do it. It's just straight up prohibited. So as a member of the commission, you'll get access to information that's not readily available to the public at times, and you are prohibited from disclosing confidential information. You also can't use the confidential information to further your financial or professional interest of yourself or anyone else. And you can't use confidential information to secure special privileges or exemptions as well. Oh, I see a hand.
Much of the information we get is confidential.
Yeah, I'm guessing most of what you get is not confidential. You're probably getting publicly available packets, but you may see stuff like maybe a personal phone number or something may come on an application. If that's not published or redacted, I'm not sure what the city's policy is on how they classify that, but I could see things like that. If someone inadvertently put like their social security number on an application, something like that, that would be considered confidential and you shouldn't disclose it. I suppose you may get wind of other confidential information. Perhaps, you know, if the city was, you know, engaged in a property transaction or something that wasn't public at the time, and somehow that was relayed to you as part of a decision, you know, maybe something like that, but probably pretty rare. Obviously, anything you receive in the public meeting is going to be public.
Hey, Hannah, I
Yeah,
think another example, and this happens very rarely, but it has happened with our planning commission, probably prior to any of the current members being on it, but sometimes if the city's involved in litigation regarding a planning commission's past decision, and there's some typically like some kind of settlement agreement or something like that that the city's working on, sometimes we will brief the planning commission on that as part of in a closed session where we have that right. And that would be an example of something also that is confidential information until such time that it's not, I guess. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, Nick. Obviously, there's the attorney-client privilege. So when the attorneys discuss matters with you privately, and by privately, I mean just outside of public view, staff and other commissioners may be present too. That would be confidential and considered privileged. Yeah, closed door sessions, those sort of things. So yeah, good point, Nick. Okay, so a couple other things that you aren't allowed to do now that you're a planning commissioner is you can't corruptly use or attempt to use your position to further your financial or professional interest or that of another. And you can't sell or offer to sell services or solicit prospective clients or employment by stating that you have an ability to influence the planning commission's decision. So obviously don't try to get employment or other work outside by saying, you know, I can get you planning commission approval or I'm on the planning commission. Just avoid those sort of statements. All right, this is one imposed by your rules. Commissioners are not allowed to have ex parte discussions regarding any business before the commission. So an ex parte discussion would be talking with an applicant outside of the setting of the planning commission meeting that's public, where all commission members may attend. And the reason behind this is, as it relates to administrative decisions, you are in a way like the trier of fact. You're going to be looking at the information presented to you, and you're going to make a determination. You're going to be sort of the judge as to whether the application complies with the standards or the laws. So it's important that everyone on the commission has the same information and that we are evaluating and making our decision based on what's in the public record, not based on what may have been discussed or said outside of the public meeting. So I assume that's the basis for that rule. All right, so there are some acts that are prohibited as it relates to business entities doing business with the city. So whether you privately do business with the city or your employer does business with the city, or an entity you have a 10% interest in does business with the city, you'll want to make sure that if you have any of those interests, that none of those contracts that may occur with the city are with the planning department. So planning commission falls under the planning department. So if you work for a company, that company cannot have a contract directly with the planning department. And again, this is a prohibited act, so it's not one of those things that disclosure is going to get you out of it. You can't contract directly with planning. This is an interesting law, but if you're getting paid to coordinate, negotiate, or otherwise broker a deal between an entity and the city, you have to disclose that prior to the discussions. So you're not prohibited from getting paid to broker a deal between a company and the city. It's just that you have to first disclose it. And then you may not participate in performing a discretionary function with respect to a contract with the city if you have a financial interest in the contract you or a relative has a financial interest in the business entity, or you or the relative are currently negotiating prospective employment with that company. All right, so gifts. This is pretty well-known policy in the city. I know personally as employees, it's something we take very seriously around here. The gifts test, also known as the influence test. So we as commission members or city employees or elected officials of the city cannot receive, accept, or solicit gifts that we know are going to influence our decisions and our official duties, or which are a reward for certain official duties or decisions taken or rendered. Obviously, there's some allowable exceptions. Obviously, you can accept gifts from relatives. Sometimes occasional small gifts are okay. I'll just tell you, though, as a matter of course around here, people don't even accept a cup of coffee from people that the relationship is only due to their employment or their role with the city. And if you do receive an unauthorized gift, you have to return it, destroy it, or give it to charity, and you need to document what you do with respect to that gift. Okay, so what happens when a conflict comes to light? If you personally discover that you might have a conflict that didn't come to light previously, you need to file a written statement and then also withdraw from further participation in the matter until you resolve whether it's a conflict that needs to be recused or not. You also have the option of requesting advisory opinions and in some cases waivers from the city attorney. And then it's also important to know that commissioners or members of the public, they can raise concerns about an actual apparent or reasonably foreseeable conflict of interest with the commission directly. So for the most part, it's pretty well self-policed and one of those self-reporting things, but be aware that your rules do allow other people to raise the concern. And then everyone's favorite slide, the very last slide, just to discuss the penalties for not complying with these laws. You can be removed from your position. There are criminal sanctions in some circumstances, and to the extent contracts are involved, they may be determined to be void. The particular penalty is going to depend on the specific facts of the case. But sort of moral of the story here is just don't do it. Don't, especially knowingly, intentionally violate, because there can be some significant sanctions. For instance, if you do use your position to further financial gain of yourself or another, and like say hire me because I can get you approval through the planning commission, and depending on how much money is at stake, that could rise to a felony. So avoid ever mentioning that you can do any sort of favor or pull any strings or be treated any differently because of your position on the planning commission. And then the last thing I'll add is some of you are members of various professions that may also have different standards at play. Obviously, I'm familiar with the legal ones. I'm less familiar with some of the other professions at play and their rules, but happy to talk through those and navigate that if that ever came up. So if there's any more questions, I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, I think that was my last slide. Yep.
I don't see any hands, so thank you, Hannah.
All right, well, awesome. Another training in the books.
Thank you. All right, Nick, do you have anything else? Otherwise, I'll adjourn the meeting.
I do not.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Amy. Good night.